You don't need more motivation. You need obsession. Not the unhealthy kind that burns you out, but the kind that locks your focus, sharpens your discipline, and makes your goals impossible to ignore. Look at anyone who has achieved something extraordinary. They weren't casually interested. They weren't kind of committed. They were consumed by what they were building. While others were distracted, they were focused. While others were resting, they were refining. While others quit, they kept going. That's the difference. Most people want success, but only when it's convenient. They work when they feel like it. They stop when it gets hard. They lose focus the moment something more entertaining appears. But obsession changes the rules. It makes discipline automatic. It turns effort into identity. It keeps you moving even when motivation disappears. This audiobook will show you how to develop that level of focus, how to train your mind to stay locked in, eliminate distractions, and build a relentless drive toward your goals without losing control or burning out. Because success doesn't belong to the most talented. It belongs to the most focused. And once you learn how to think, act, and operate with controlled obsession, average is no longer an option. Chapter 1. Why normal effort will never make you exceptional. Most people operate at a level that feels comfortable. They do what is required. They meet expectations. They stay within limits that feel safe and manageable. And then they wonder why their results look the same as everyone else's. Average effort produces average results. This is not harsh. It is reality. If you approach your goals with a casual mindset, working when it's convenient, stopping when it becomes difficult, and giving only what feels comfortable, you will always remain within the same range as everyone else doing the same thing. Because comfort does not create separation. Intensity does. The difference between people who achieve ordinary results and those who achieve extraordinary ones is not just talent, intelligence, or opportunity. It is depth of focus. It is the level of commitment they bring to what they are building. It is the willingness to go beyond what feels normal. This is where obsession begins, not as something extreme or unhealthy, but as a decision to care more than most people are willing to think about your goals more deeply, to spend more time improving your craft, to stay engaged long after others have checked out. Most people are interested. Few are committed. Even fewer are obsessed. And that difference shows in their results. Interest is weak. It fades when things get hard. It disappears when distractions appear. It depends on mood. Commitment is stronger. It pushes you to keep going when you don't feel like it. But obsession goes further. It changes how you think. It becomes part of your identity. You don't just work on your goal. You live it. You think about it when you wake up. You refine it during the day. You analyze it when things don't work. You return to it again and again, not because you have to, but because you want to. This level of focus creates something powerful. Repetition. And repetition creates mastery. When you spend more time thinking, practicing, and improving than everyone else, you naturally get better faster. Not by luck, not by chance, but by volume and depth of effort. While others are stopping, you are continuing. While others are distracted, you are focused. While others are inconsistent, you are building momentum. This is where separation begins. But most people never reach this level. Not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling to go beyond comfort. They protect their time for entertainment. They protect their energy for ease. They protect their focus for things that do not matter. And in doing so, they limit their potential. Because success requires sacrifice. It requires time. It requires attention. It requires energy directed in one clear direction. You cannot be deeply focused and constantly distracted at the same time. You cannot build something meaningful while giving it partial effort. And you cannot expect exceptional results from inconsistent action. This is why obsession becomes necessary. Not to consume your life in a destructive way, but to elevate your standards, to raise the level at which you operate, to create a mindset where doing the minimum is no longer acceptable. When you develop this mindset, your behavior changes. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop doing things halfway. You begin to take your goals seriously. And when you take something seriously, your actions reflect it. You plan better. You execute more consistently. You pay attention to details. You push through resistance. Not because it is easy, but because it matters. Another important shift happens when you move from normal effort to obsession. You stop comparing yourself to others. Most people look around and measure their effort against the average. If I'm doing as much as everyone else, I'm doing enough. But this thinking keeps you stuck because the average is not your competition. The average is your baseline. If you want to stand out, you must go beyond it. You must operate at a level that most people are not willing to reach. That requires focus. That requires discipline. And most importantly, that requires obsession. It also changes how you view time. Time is no longer something to spend casually. It becomes something to invest intentionally. You begin asking different questions. Is this moving me forward? Is this helping me improve? Is this worth my attention? If the answer is no, you reduce it. If the answer is yes, you double down. This level of awareness sharpens your decisions. It removes unnecessary distractions, and it keeps your energy directed toward what matters most. Over time, this creates momentum. Small improvements compound, skills develop, confidence grows, and results begin to appear. Not instantly, but consistently. And consistency is what separates those who start from those who succeed. Because many people begin with motivation. Few continue with discipline, but only a small number sustain obsession. And those are the ones who reach a level others admire. Not because they were different at the start, but because they chose to operate differently along the way. So understand this clearly. Normal effort will keep you where you are. Slight improvement may move you forward slowly. But if you want to create something exceptional, you must be willing to go deeper, to care more, to focus longer, to commit fully. That is where obsession begins. And once you cross that line, your approach changes. Your standards rise, your actions intensify, and your results follow. Because in a world full of distraction and average effort, the person who chooses to focus with intensity gains an advantage that cannot be ignored. And this is only the beginning. Chapter 2. The mindset shift from interest to obsession. They're the moment that separates people who talk about success from those who actually achieve it. It is not when they start. It is not when they set goals. It is not even when they feel motivated. It is the moment they stop treating their goals as an option and start treating them as a priority. This is the shift from interest to obsession. At first, most people are interested. They like the idea of success. They enjoy thinking about it. They feel excited when they imagine the outcome. But interest is passive. It requires nothing. You can be interested in something for years and never take real action. Because interest does not demand commitment. It allows excuses. It allows delay. It allows distraction. This is why so many people stay stuck. They are interested but not invested. They want results, but only if it's convenient. They work on their goals when they feel like it, and stop when they don't. This cycle keeps them in the same place, because progress requires consistency, and consistency cannot exist without commitment. This is where the mindset must change. You must move from "I'll do it when I can" to "I will make time." From "I feel like it today" to "I do it regardless." From "this would be nice" to "this is necessary." This is not about pressure. It is about priority. When something becomes a true priority, your behavior adjusts automatically. You stop negotiating. You stop delaying. You stop treating your goals like they are optional. This is the beginning of obsession, not in a reckless or unhealthy way, but in a focused, intentional way, a way that changes how you think. When you're obsessed, your goal is no longer something separate from your life. It becomes part of your identity. You don't just want success. You align yourself with it. Your decisions, your habits, your time, all begin to reflect that alignment. This is why obsessed individuals operate differently. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They create it. They don't rely on external pressure. They build internal standards. They don't look for shortcuts. They focus on mastery. And this mindset shift affects everything. It changes how you handle time. Instead of asking, "Do I have time for this?" you ask, "How do I make time for this?" It changes how you handle obstacles. Instead of seeing them as reasons to stop, you see them as problems to solve. It changes how you handle discomfort. Instead of avoiding it, you accept it as part of the process. Because when you're truly committed, discomfort is no longer a barrier. It is a requirement. Another key aspect of this shift is clarity. You cannot become obsessed with something vague. If your goal is unclear, your effort will be inconsistent. Your mind needs direction. It needs something specific to focus on. What are you building? What are you trying to achieve? What does success look like for you? The clearer your vision, the stronger your focus. Because clarity removes confusion, and confusion leads to hesitation. Once you have clarity, the next step is alignment. Your daily actions must match your long-term goals. If your goal is to improve, but your habits are filled with distraction, there's a disconnect, and that disconnect slows your progress. But when your actions align with your goal, momentum builds. You move forward consistently. You see results, and those results reinforce your behavior. This creates a loop. Effort leads to progress. Progress leads to motivation. Motivation leads to more effort. And over time, this loop strengthens your commitment until it becomes automatic. This is where obsession becomes powerful because it is no longer forced. It becomes natural. You don't have to convince yourself to work. You don't have to push yourself constantly. You're drawn to it because it matters to you, because it is part of who you are. However, there is a challenge. This level of focus requires sacrifice. You cannot give your full attention to everything. If you try, you will end up giving partial attention to everything. And partial attention leads to average results. So you must make decisions. What matters most? What deserves your time? What needs to be reduced or removed? These decisions are not always easy, but they are necessary because obsession requires focus, and focus requires elimination. Another important element is protecting your mindset. You will face doubt. You will face criticism. You will face moments where progress feels slow. This is where many people fall back into interest. They lose intensity. They lose focus. They lose belief. But when you have made the shift to obsession, you respond differently. You stay committed. You adjust your approach. You keep moving forward because your mindset is no longer dependent on results. It is anchored in your identity. You're someone who follows through, someone who stays focused, someone who does the work. And that identity keeps you moving even when things are not perfect. Over time, this shift becomes visible. Your work improves. Your focus sharpens. Your discipline strengthens. And your results begin to reflect your effort. Not instantly, but consistently. And consistency is what builds success. Because success is not a single moment. It is the result of repeated actions over time. Actions driven by a mindset that does not quit. That does not settle. That does not treat goals as optional. So understand this. Interest will keep you comfortable. Commitment will move you forward. But obsession will transform you. It will change how you think, how you act, how you use your time, and how you approach every challenge. Because once your goal becomes a priority, not just in words, but in action, you stop living casually. You start living intentionally. And that is where real progress begins. That is where you separate yourself. That is where success stops being an idea and starts becoming your reality. Chapter 3. The Power of Controlled Obsession. Obsession has a reputation. When people hear the word, they think of imbalance. They imagine burnout, stress, and losing control. They picture someone consumed in a way that damages their health, relationships, and peace of mind. And they're not wrong. Uncontrolled obsession can be destructive. But controlled obsession, that is where power lives. The difference is simple. Uncontrolled obsession controls you. Controlled obsession is something you control. One leads to chaos. The other leads to mastery. Controlled obsession is not about doing more of everything. It is about doing more of what matters and less of everything else. It is focused intensity, directed energy, intentional effort. It means you are selective with your time, your attention, and your priorities. You don't chase every opportunity. You don't react to every distraction. You don't divide your energy across things that don't move you forward. Instead, you lock in on one clear direction, and you give it depth. This is what most people never do. They spread themselves thin. They try to balance too many goals, too many distractions, too many inputs. And as a result, they never go deep enough to create something meaningful. Controlled obsession fixes that. It forces clarity. It forces prioritization. It forces you to ask, what truly matters right now? And once you answer that, everything else becomes secondary. This does not mean you ignore your life. It means you structure it. You give your energy where it counts, and you protect that energy. One of the most powerful aspects of controlled obsession is attention management. Your attention is your most valuable resource. Where it goes, your progress follows. If your attention is scattered, your results will be scattered. If your attention is focused, your results will reflect it. Controlled obsession trains you to direct your attention deliberately. You choose what deserves your focus. And once you choose, you stay with it. Even when it gets difficult, even when it becomes repetitive, even when it loses excitement. Because you understand something most people don't. Progress is not built on constant excitement. It is built on sustained effort. And sustained effort requires staying focused long after the initial motivation fades. This is where controlled obsession becomes your advantage. While others lose interest, you stay engaged. While others get distracted, you go deeper. While others stop, you continue. And over time, that difference compounds. Another key element is emotional control. If you're going to operate with intensity, you must also operate with stability. You cannot let your emotions dictate your actions. Some days, you will feel motivated. Other days, you won't. Some days, progress will feel fast. Other days, it will feel slow. If your effort depends on how you feel, your results will always be inconsistent. Controlled obsession removes that dependency. You act regardless of mood. You stay consistent regardless of how you feel. Because your focus is not emotional. It is intentional. This creates reliability. And reliability builds trust with yourself. You begin to trust that you will show up, that you will follow through, that you will continue even when it's not easy. That trust is powerful because once you trust yourself, hesitation disappears. You no longer question whether you will act. You simply do. Another important aspect of controlled obsession is sustainability. Intensity without control leads to burnout. But controlled intensity creates endurance. You push yourself, but not to the point of collapse. You work hard, but you also recover. You stay focused, but you don't lose perspective. This balance is critical because success is not about short bursts of effort. It is about long-term consistency. You're not trying to win one day. You're building something over time, and that requires pacing. It requires awareness. It requires knowing when to push and when to pause. Controlled obsession allows you to maintain intensity without losing control. It keeps you moving forward without breaking down. It turns effort into a system. Another powerful shift happens when you adopt this mindset. You stop chasing results and start focusing on process. Most people are obsessed with outcomes. They want success, recognition, and achievement, but they don't focus on what creates those outcomes. Controlled obsession reverses that. You become obsessed with the work, with improvement, with execution, with showing up consistently. And when you focus on the process, the results take care of themselves, because the process is what produces them. This shift reduces pressure. It removes anxiety about the future, and it keeps your attention in the present, where your actions actually matter. Over time, this creates mastery, because mastery is not built through occasional effort. It is built through repeated, focused practice. It is built by showing up again and again, refining, improving, adjusting. And controlled obsession ensures that you do exactly that. Without distraction, without inconsistency, without losing direction. It also changes how you see competition. You're no longer trying to keep up with others. You're focused on your own growth, your own progress, your own standards. Because when your attention is internal, you improve faster. You waste less energy comparing and more energy building. This is where real confidence comes from, not from external validation, but from internal consistency, from knowing that you are doing the work, that you are improving, that you are moving forward every day. So understand this clearly. Obsession is not the problem. Lack of control is. When you learn to direct your intensity, to focus your energy, and to align your actions with your goals, obsession becomes one of the most powerful tools you can develop. It sharpens your focus. It strengthens your discipline. It accelerates your progress. And it separates you from those who operate casually. Because in a world full of distraction, the person who can focus deeply, consistently, and intentionally has an advantage that is impossible to ignore. That is the power of controlled obsession. Not chaos, not imbalance, but precision, direction, and relentless, focused effort applied over time. And once you learn to operate at that level, everything changes. Because you're no longer just working. You're building. With purpose, with intensity, with control. Chapter 4. The dark side of obsession. When it starts controlling you, obsession can build you, but it can also break you. The same intensity that drives success can, if left unchecked, begin to consume you in a way that becomes destructive instead of productive. This is the side most people don't talk about. Because obsession sounds powerful. It sounds admirable. It sounds like the key to winning. And in many ways, it is. But only when it is controlled. When it is not, it turns against you. The first sign of unhealthy obsession is loss of control. Instead of directing your focus begins to control you. You feel like you can't switch off. You struggle to rest. You become anxious when you're not working. Your mind is constantly racing, constantly thinking, constantly pushing. At first, this may feel like dedication, but over time, it becomes exhaustion. Because intensity without recovery leads to burnout, and burnout destroys performance. Not immediately, but gradually. Your energy drops, your clarity fades, your motivation becomes unstable, and eventually, the very thing you were building begins to suffer. Another danger is imbalance. When obsession becomes unhealthy, it starts to eliminate everything else. Your relationships weaken. Your health declines. Your mental stability becomes fragile. You begin to sacrifice things that actually support your long-term success because you believe that more effort is always better. But that is not true. More effort without balance leads to collapse. Peak performance is not just about working hard. It is about sustaining effort over time. And sustainability requires balance. Another critical issue is identity attachment. When your entire identity becomes tied to one goal, one outcome, or one path, you create pressure. Everything starts to feel like it defines you. Success feels like validation. Failure feels like personal loss. And this emotional attachment can become dangerous because it makes you reactive. It makes you anxious. It makes you afraid of setbacks. Instead of focusing on growth, you begin to focus on avoiding failure. And that fear limits your progress. It reduces creativity. It reduces risk-taking. It keeps you playing safe, which is the opposite of what obsession is supposed to do. Another hidden danger is tunnel vision. When you're too locked in, you may ignore important signals. You may continue down a path that is no longer effective. You may resist feedback. You may overlook better opportunities because you are too attached to your current direction. Controlled obsession requires awareness. Uncontrolled obsession creates blindness, and blindness leads to mistakes. Mistakes that could have been avoided if you had stepped back and reassessed. This is why reflection is essential. You must regularly evaluate your actions. Are you moving forward? Are you improving? Or are you just pushing harder without direction? Because effort alone is not enough. It must be guided. It must be intentional. Another important factor is emotional exhaustion. When you operate at a high level of intensity without breaks, your emotional system becomes overloaded. You become more reactive, more impatient, more easily frustrated. Small problems feel bigger. Small setbacks feel heavier. And this affects not just your work, but your overall well-being. You lose the sense of control that you were trying to build. And this creates a cycle. You push harder to compensate, which leads to more exhaustion, which leads to lower performance, which leads to more pressure. And the cycle continues. This is how obsession turns into burnout. Not because you lack discipline, but because you lack control. So the question becomes, how do you prevent this? How do you stay intense without becoming consumed? The answer is simple, but not easy. You create boundaries. You decide when to work. And just as importantly, you decide when to stop. You allow yourself to recover, not as a reward, but as a requirement. Recovery is not weakness. It is part of performance. Your brain needs time to reset. Your body needs time to recover. Your mind needs space to process. Without this, your performance will always decline over time. Another key is detachment. You care deeply about your goals, but you do not attach your entire identity to them. You separate who you are from what you do. This gives you flexibility. It allows you to adapt, to change direction if necessary, to learn from failure without being destroyed by it. This balance is what keeps you stable. Another important principle is awareness. You must constantly observe your state. Are you focused or overwhelmed? Are you progressing or just pushing? Are you improving or just repeating? These questions keep you grounded. They prevent you from drifting into unhealthy patterns. They keep your obsession aligned with growth. And finally, you must remember why you started. Not just the goal, but the purpose behind it, the meaning, the reason it matters. Because when obsession is connected to purpose, it becomes sustainable. It becomes something that drives you forward without destroying you. But when it is disconnected, it becomes empty. It becomes pressure without direction. And pressure without direction leads to burnout. So understand this clearly. Obsession is powerful, but it is not automatically positive. It must be controlled. It must be guided. It must be balanced. Because the goal is not just to succeed. The goal is to sustain success, to build something meaningful, to grow without losing yourself in the process. And that requires awareness. It requires discipline. It requires control. Because when you master your obsession, it becomes your greatest strength. But if you don't, it becomes your biggest weakness. And the difference between the two is not intensity. It is control. Chapter 5. Turning obsession into daily action. Obsession without action is useless. You can think about your goals all day. You can visualize success. You can feel motivated and inspired. But if your obsession does not translate into consistent daily action, it changes nothing. Real progress is built in what you do every single day. This is where most people fail. They feel intense bursts of motivation. They get excited. They make plans, but they don't execute consistently. Their obsession stays in their mind, not in their behavior. And without action, nothing moves. So the question becomes, how do you turn obsession into something real, something measurable, something that produces results? You start by simplifying your focus. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to do too much at once. Too many goals, too many priorities, too many directions. This scatters your energy, and scattered energy produces weak results. Obsession requires focus, not just intensity, but direction. You must decide what matters most. What is the one thing that, if you improved it consistently, would move your life forward? That becomes your primary focus. Everything else becomes secondary. This does not mean you ignore your responsibilities. It means you prioritize your growth. Once you have clarity, the next step is structure. Obsession becomes powerful when it is organized. Without structure, Intensity turns into chaos. You start many things. You finish few. You work hard, but not effectively. Structure creates consistency. It turns effort into a system. You decide when you will work, what you will work on, and how long you will focus. You remove guesswork, because guesswork creates hesitation, and hesitation leads to inaction. When your actions are planned, execution becomes easier. Another important principle is starting before you feel ready. Most people wait. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect mood, the perfect conditions. But those moments rarely come. And even when they do, they don't last. Obsession does not wait. It acts, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, because action creates momentum, and momentum creates motivation, not the other way around. Another key is eliminating friction. If something is hard to start, you will delay it. If something is easy to start, you will do it more often. So you must make your actions simple, clear, accessible. Prepare your environment. Remove distractions. Set everything up in advance. So when it is time to act, there is no resistance. You simply begin. This reduces the mental effort required to start. And starting is often the hardest part. Consistency is where everything comes together. Not intensity for one day. Not effort for one week. But repeated action over time. This is what builds results. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent. Even on days when your energy is low. Even on days when your focus is not strong. Even on days when you don't feel like it. You show up. You do the work. Because consistency builds identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. Someone who executes. Someone who doesn't quit. And that identity reinforces your behavior. Another powerful tool is tracking progress. Not in a complicated way, but enough to stay aware. What did you do today? Did you follow through? Did you move forward? Tracking creates accountability. It makes your actions visible. And when your actions are visible, you are more likely to stay consistent. It also gives you feedback. You can see what is working, what needs adjustment, and where you need to improve. Another important factor is managing energy. Obsession can push you to work nonstop, but that is not sustainable. Your performance depends on your energy. If your energy drops, your output suffers. So you must protect it. Sleep properly. Take breaks. Move your body. These are not distractions. They are investments. They allow you to maintain intensity over time. Without them, your performance declines. Another key principle is focusing on execution, not perfection. Perfection slows you down. It creates hesitation. It makes you overthink. Execution moves you forward. It allows you to learn, to improve, to adjust. You do not need perfect action. You need consistent action, because progress comes from doing, not waiting. Over time, something powerful happens. Your actions begin to compound. Small efforts add up. Skills improve. Confidence grows. Results appear, not suddenly, but steadily. And that steady progress builds momentum. Momentum makes everything easier. Tasks that once felt difficult become manageable. Effort feels more natural. Discipline becomes automatic. And your obsession becomes visible, not in your thoughts, but in your results. This is the transformation. From thinking to doing, from planning to executing, from wanting to achieving. Because in the end, success is not about how much you think about your goals. It is about how consistently you act on them. Every day, every session, every decision. So take your obsession out of your mind and put it into your actions. Turn it into structure. Turn it into habits. Turn it into daily execution. Because when your obsession becomes action, progress becomes inevitable. And when progress becomes consistent, success is no longer a possibility. It becomes a direction, one that you are moving toward every single day. Chapter 6. Building relentless consistency. Obsession may ignite the fire, but consistency is what keeps it burning. You can have intensity. You can have focus. You can have moments where you feel unstoppable. But if those moments are not repeated, day after day, they mean nothing. Because success is not built in bursts. It is built in repetition. This is where most people fall apart. They start strong. They feel motivated. They push hard for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. But then something happens. They lose momentum. They skip a day, then another. And slowly, they drift back to where they started. Not because they lack potential, but because they lack consistency. Consistency is not exciting. It is not dramatic. It does not give you instant results. But it is the most powerful force you can build. Because it compounds. Every small action, repeated over time, creates results far greater than occasional bursts of effort. The challenge is simple. Can you keep going when nothing feels special? Can you show up when there is no excitement? Can you stay committed when progress feels slow? That is where consistency is tested, and that is where it is built. The first step in developing relentless consistency is removing reliance on motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Some days you have it, some days you don't. If your actions depend on how you feel, your results will always be inconsistent. Consistency requires a different approach. You act regardless of how you feel. You show up because it is part of your routine, because it is what you do, not because you are in the mood. This is the shift from emotional action to disciplined action, and it changes everything. Another key principle is reducing the standard for starting. Most people fail because they set the bar too high. They believe they need to perform at their best every day. So when they don't feel ready, they don't start. But consistency is not about being perfect. It is about being present. Some days you will perform at a high level. Other days, your effort will be average. And some days, it will be minimal. But you still show up, because showing up maintains the habit. And maintaining the habit is more important than the quality of any single session. Another powerful strategy is creating non-negotiable actions. These are tasks that you complete every day, no matter what. Not optional, not flexible, non-negotiable. They can be small, but they must be consistent, because these actions build momentum. They reinforce identity. They prove to yourself that you're someone who follows through. Over time, these small actions become automatic. And once something becomes automatic, consistency becomes effortless. Another important factor is eliminating decision fatigue. The more decisions you have to make, the more likely you are to hesitate. And hesitation leads to inconsistency. So simplify your process. Decide in advance. When will you work? What will you work on? How long will you focus? Remove uncertainty, because clarity leads to action, and action leads to consistency. Environment also plays a major role. If your environment is full of distractions, your consistency will suffer. Not because you lack discipline, but because you are constantly being pulled away. So you must design your environment to support your actions. Remove distractions. Create a space that signals focus. Make it easier to start, because the easier it is to begin, the more consistent you will be. Another critical element is recovery. Consistency is not about working nonstop. It is about working sustainably. If you push too hard without rest, you will burn out. And burnout destroys consistency. So you must balance effort with recovery. Rest when needed. Recharge your energy. Because consistency requires endurance. And endurance requires care. Tracking progress is another powerful tool. Not for perfection, but for awareness. When you track your actions, you create accountability. You see your patterns. You notice when you are consistent and when you are not. This awareness helps you adjust. It keeps you aligned, and it reinforces your commitment. Another important mindset shift is focusing on identity. You are not just trying to be consistent. You are becoming someone who is consistent. This is a deeper change, because identity drives behavior. If you see yourself as inconsistent, your actions will reflect that. But if you see yourself as disciplined, reliable, and focused, your actions will begin to align. Each time you show up, you reinforce that identity. And over time, it becomes real. There will be challenges. There will be days when you don't feel like doing anything. days when you're tired, distracted, unmotivated. This is where consistency matters most. Not on the easy days, but on the difficult ones. Because those are the days that define your standard. If you can show up when it's hard, you build something powerful. You build trust with yourself. You prove that you are reliable. And that reliability becomes your strength. Over time, consistency creates momentum. Momentum makes everything easier. You no longer struggle to start. You no longer rely on motivation. You operate from habit, from routine, from discipline. And that is where real progress happens. Because consistency removes friction. It removes hesitation. It removes the need to constantly restart. You're always moving forward, even if the progress is small. And small progress, repeated daily, leads to massive results. This is the power of relentless consistency. Not intensity, not talent, not luck, but the ability to show up again and again without breaking the pattern. Because in the end, success is not about what you do once. It is about what you do repeatedly. And when your actions become consistent, your results become predictable. You don't hope for success. You build it, one day at a time, one action at a time, one decision at a time. And that is how obsession turns into achievement. Not through occasional effort, but through relentless consistency. Chapter 7. Eliminating distractions to protect your obsession. Obsession gives you direction. Consistency gives you progress. But distractions? Distractions destroy everything. You can have clear goals. You can have strong discipline. You can even have powerful habits. But if your attention is constantly being pulled away, your progress will always slow down. Because focus is fragile. It does not take much to break it. One notification, one quick scroll, just a minute break, and suddenly your momentum is gone. Most people underestimate how damaging distractions really are. They think it's harmless. It's just a quick check. It won't take long. I'll get back to work right after. But the cost is not the time. The cost is the interruption. Every time you break your focus, your brain has to reset. It has to re-engage. It has to rebuild the depth you just lost. And that takes energy. It takes time. It takes effort. So what feels like a small distraction becomes a big loss. Not once, but repeated throughout the day. This is why most people feel busy, but not productive. They are constantly doing something, but rarely finishing anything with depth. Because their attention is divided. And divided attention produces weak results. If you want to operate at a high level, you must protect your attention aggressively. Not casually, not occasionally, but intentionally. The first step is awareness. You must recognize what is distracting you. Is it your phone? Social media? Messages? Noise? People? Internal thoughts? You cannot eliminate what you do not see. So pay attention. Notice when your focus breaks. Notice what pulls you away. Notice how often it happens. This awareness is the starting point. Because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. The next step is elimination, not reduction. Elimination, at least during your focused work periods. Turn off notifications. Silence your phone. Close unnecessary tabs. Remove anything that does not support your task. Create an environment where distraction is not easily accessible. Because if it is easy, you will use it. And if you use it, it will break your focus. This is not about willpower. It is about design. Make distraction difficult. Make focus easy. Another powerful strategy is setting clear boundaries. Decide when you will be unavailable. Protect that time. Do not allow interruptions. Because if you're always accessible, you will never go deep. And depth is where real progress happens. This may feel uncomfortable at first. You may feel like you're missing out, like you need to respond, like you need to stay connected. But understand this. Every time you say yes to distraction, you say no to your progress. And over time, those small yes decisions add up. Another key principle is single tasking. Do one thing, fully, completely, without switching, without checking, without dividing your attention. Multitasking is a myth. It feels productive, but it reduces quality. It increases mistakes, and it weakens your ability to focus. Single tasking builds depth. It strengthens your concentration. It allows you to produce better results in less time. Another important factor is managing internal distractions. Not all distractions come from outside. Some come from your own mind. Random thoughts, worries, ideas. These can pull your attention away just as easily. The solution is not to fight them aggressively. It is to acknowledge them and return. Notice the thought. Do not engage with it. Bring your focus back to the task. This takes practice, but over time, it becomes easier. Your mind becomes more stable, more controlled. Another powerful tool is time blocking. Set specific periods where you're fully focused. No interruptions, no distractions, just work. Knowing that you have a defined time makes it easier to commit. It creates structure, and structure supports focus. After that period, you can rest. Check your phone, respond to messages. But during the block, you protect your attention. This creates a rhythm. Focus, break, focus, break. And this rhythm keeps your energy high while maintaining productivity. Another key element is reducing unnecessary input. You do not need constant information. You do not need to consume endlessly. Too much input creates mental noise, and noise reduces clarity. So be selective. Consume what adds value. Ignore what does not, because every piece of information you take in competes for your attention, and your attention is limited. Over time, as you eliminate distractions, something powerful happens. Your focus deepens. You stay engaged longer. You think more clearly. You produce better work, not because you are working harder, but because you are working without interruption. And uninterrupted work is powerful. It allows you to enter a state where everything flows, where effort feels natural, where progress accelerates. This is where obsession thrives, not in chaos, but in clarity, not in distraction, but in focus. So understand this. Your obsession is only as strong as your ability to protect it. If you allow distractions to take your attention, your intensity weakens. Your consistency breaks. Your progress slows. But if you guard your focus, if you eliminate what pulls you away, if you create an environment that supports your goals, you gain an advantage that most people never develop. Because most people do not protect their attention. They give it away freely. To notifications, to entertainment, to things that do not matter. But you are choosing something different. You are choosing to take control, to decide where your attention goes, to protect your focus like it matters. Because it does. It is the foundation of everything you are building. And once you learn to eliminate distractions, your obsession becomes stronger. Your actions become sharper. And your results become inevitable. Because nothing is dividing you anymore. You're locked in, focused, and moving forward without interruption. Chapter 8. Leveraging obsession to build unstoppable momentum. Obsession is not just about focus. It is not just about working harder. It is about creating a force that carries you forward. Even when obstacles appear, motivation fades, or challenges feel impossible. Momentum is the secret weapon of the obsessed. It is the invisible current that makes effort feel natural, decisions easier, and results inevitable. But momentum is not automatic. It is built. It is cultivated. It is harnessed intentionally. The first step in leveraging obsession for momentum is identifying your core focus. What is the one thing that, if pursued relentlessly, will create the largest impact in your life or business? This is not about chasing multiple goals. It is about concentrating all your energy on what truly matters. Obsession thrives when there is clarity of purpose. Without focus, energy dissipates. Without clarity, action becomes scattered. Next, you must amplify your effort. Obsession means more than simply doing tasks. It means deepening every action, going further than expected, spending time refining skills, strategies, and habits to levels others won't. This is the compounding effect of intensity. Small actions done with relentless focus multiply over time, creating breakthroughs that seem disproportionate to the effort invested. But momentum is fragile. It can be stalled by hesitation, doubt, or indecision. Every time you pause unnecessarily or overthink, momentum slows. Obsession counteracts this by creating a bias for action. The obsessed act. They act decisively. They act even when the path isn't perfectly clear. And each action feeds the next. Momentum builds. Another critical aspect of building unstoppable momentum is minimizing friction. Friction comes from distractions, uncertainty, or inefficient processes. The more friction, the slower the current moves. Obsession pushes you to eliminate unnecessary steps. It drives you to optimize systems, streamline tasks, and reduce obstacles. When friction is removed, every move becomes smoother, faster, and more impactful. Energy management is equally important. Obsession is not about burning out. It is about sustaining effort. Momentum requires stamina. If you expend all your energy at once, you collapse before the current can carry you forward. The obsessed understand recovery, balance, and pacing. They structure their work and rest intentionally. They protect their mental and physical resources so momentum remains steady. Accountability further amplifies momentum. When you hold yourself responsible for results, publicly, privately, or to a mentor, you create external forces that reinforce your internal obsession. Obsession without accountability risks stagnation. Accountability transforms obsession into visible progress, making momentum tangible. Equally vital is a mindset that embraces challenges as fuel. Obstacles are inevitable. Setbacks are unavoidable. The difference is how the obsessed respond. They treat resistance as information. They treat failure as feedback. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to refine strategy, sharpen skills, and accelerate progress. Momentum feeds off this adaptation. The stronger the response, the faster you recover and move forward. Another subtle, yet powerful element is the cumulative psychology of small wins. Every completed task, every goal achieved, every step forward reinforces belief in your ability to succeed. Obsession magnifies these wins. It turns minor progress into a psychological engine that propels you relentlessly. Momentum feeds belief. Belief feeds action. Action feeds more momentum. And the cycle continues. Visualization and mental rehearsal also play a role. The obsessed do not wait for perfect conditions. They imagine outcomes, plan sequences, and rehearse challenges mentally. This primes their mind for action and creates confidence that keeps momentum unbroken. One of the most overlooked aspects of momentum is the social environment. Surround yourself with people who amplify your focus and energy. Eliminate those who drain attention or create doubt. Momentum is contagious. The energy of focused, ambitious peers reinforces your obsession. It encourages consistency and strengthens resolve. Finally, the obsessed embrace long-term vision. Momentum is not a short sprint. It is a continuous flow. Every action today is connected to tomorrow's outcomes. Every small win compounds. Every habit reinforces the next. And over time, what seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Obsession transforms ordinary effort into a force that cannot be stopped. When focus, action, consistency, and energy align, momentum becomes a natural consequence. It carries you forward through fatigue, doubt, and challenges. It makes high performance feel effortless. It makes progress unavoidable. By leveraging obsession to create unstoppable momentum, you move beyond luck, talent, or timing. You move into a realm where results are dictated by intention, not chance. And once momentum takes hold, it is difficult for anyone or anything to slow you down. This is the power of controlled obsession. Not fleeting inspiration, not casual effort, but deliberate, sustained focus that propels you toward extraordinary success. It is the engine behind the lives of the most accomplished individuals, and it is available to anyone willing to cultivate it, protect it, and relentlessly pursue it. Chapter 9. Sustaining Obsession Without Burning Out. Obsession is powerful. It drives action, sharpens focus, and separates the exceptional from the ordinary. But uncontrolled, it can be dangerous. Without management, obsession becomes stress, fatigue, and eventual burnout. The challenge is learning how to sustain obsession for long-term results. The first step in sustainable obsession is understanding energy, not just time. Most people measure effort by hours spent. The obsessed measure it by energy invested. They recognize that mental clarity, physical health, and emotional stability are critical resources. Without them, no level of focus can be maintained. This is why rest, nutrition, and recovery are not optional. They are foundational. Next, obsession must be paired with purpose. Energy without direction leads to exhaustion. The obsessed tie every action to a clear objective. Every decision, every task, every sacrifice is intentional. Purpose filters out unnecessary activity and ensures that effort is always meaningful. Another key principle is micro-goals and milestones. Long-term obsession can feel overwhelming. Breaking it into smaller, tangible steps creates structure. Each completed milestone reinforces motivation, builds confidence, and prevents the feeling of stagnation. Momentum thrives on these wins. Boundaries are critical for sustained obsession. You cannot be available 24/7. You cannot chase goals at the expense of your health, relationships, or mental well-being. The obsessed set strict boundaries. They know when to focus deeply, when to rest, and when to step back to recharge. This intentional separation preserves long-term energy and prevents obsession from becoming destructive. Variety and focus is another tool for sustainability. Obsession doesn't mean doing the same thing in the same way endlessly. It means pursuing excellence while maintaining adaptability. Rotating tasks, exploring new strategies, and challenging yourself in different areas keeps the mind engaged and prevents fatigue. Reflection is equally important. The obsessed regularly evaluate progress, assess effectiveness, and adjust strategies. They ask what is working, what is draining energy unnecessarily, what needs to change. This self-awareness prevents wasted effort and maintains clarity of purpose. Social support plays a subtle yet essential role. Obsession doesn't mean isolation. Surrounding yourself with people who respect your focus, share your values, and challenge you positively reinforces sustainable effort. They provide encouragement, perspective, and accountability, which all help prevent burnout. Stress management cannot be overlooked. Obsession is intense by nature. Without strategies to manage stress, breathing exercises, meditation, exercise, or mindful breaks, the intensity becomes harmful. The obsessed incorporate these techniques intentionally to sustain performance without collapsing under pressure. Flexibility is another key component. Life is unpredictable. Even most disciplined cannot control every variable. The obsessed learn to adjust plans without losing the drive behind them. They treat setbacks as temporary obstacles, not reasons to abandon focus. This resilience keeps obsession healthy and continuous. Finally, celebrating progress is essential. Too often, obsession becomes purely about the next goal. The obsessed take time to acknowledge achievements. This reinforces the behavior, maintains morale, and strengthens the psychological foundation for continued effort. Sustaining obsession requires a balance of intensity and care. It requires protecting energy, setting boundaries, and remaining flexible. It requires purpose, structure, reflection, and support. When managed effectively, obsession becomes not a risk, but a sustainable force. This is the point where the obsessed move beyond short-term wins. They enter a rhythm of high performance that endures. They achieve exceptional results without sacrificing their health or sanity. They turn raw intensity into a controlled, unstoppable force. Because true obsession is not reckless. It is deliberate, sustainable, and powerful. It is the tool that builds momentum, mastery, and extraordinary outcomes over a lifetime. And when you learn to sustain it, nothing, not fatigue, not distractions, not setbacks can stop you. Chapter 10. Becoming a master of controlled obsession. Reaching the pinnacle of success is not about random bursts of effort or fleeting inspiration. It is about learning to channel obsession deliberately, consistently, and sustainably. Controlled obsession is the difference between burning out and breaking through. By now, you understand that obsession fuels focus, sharpens discipline, and accelerates momentum. It separates the exceptional from the average. But the final step is mastering it, turning obsession into a long-term strategy rather than a temporary fire. The first principle of mastery is self-awareness. You must recognize your limits, triggers, and patterns. Understand when intensity becomes counterproductive. Observe when fatigue, frustration, or distraction creeps in. The obsessed who master themselves act before burnout can take hold. Next is deliberate structure. Your day, your priorities, and your actions must be intentionally designed to maximize focus without depleting energy. This includes scheduling deep work sessions, allocating time for reflection, and incorporating restorative practices. Structure converts raw obsession into consistent output. Another critical component is alignment with purpose. Obsession is sustainable only when it is tied to something meaningful. If your goals lack personal significance, intensity fades. When you connect effort to purpose, motivation persists, even during challenges. Sustained obsession also requires adaptability. Obstacles will arise. Plans will fail. Resources may fluctuate. The mastered obsessed learn to adjust strategies while maintaining intensity. They treat challenges as feedback, not failures. Flexibility keeps obsession effective, not destructive. Equally important is the cultivation of mental resilience. The path of obsession is filled with setbacks, criticism, and uncertainty. Those who master it develop a mindset that embraces discomfort, persists through adversity, and sees problems as opportunities for growth. Resilience transforms pressure into progress. Reflection and feedback are essential for continuous improvement. Obsessed individuals regularly assess their actions, measure outcomes, and adjust accordingly. They refine habits, sharpen skills, and evolve strategies. Without reflection, obsession becomes effort without growth. Energy management remains foundational. Controlled obsession balances intensity with recovery. Sleep, nutrition, exercise, and mental breaks are not indulgences. They are necessities. They replenish the resources that obsession consumes, ensuring sustainability. Accountability magnifies effectiveness. The mastered obsessed hold themselves to high standards, often in view of mentors, peers, or teams. This accountability ensures that intensity translates into results rather than wasted energy. Finally, the ultimate sign of mastery is integration. Obsession becomes part of who you are, not just what you do. It informs your decisions, shapes your habits, and drives your actions seamlessly. It is no longer forced. It is natural, controlled, and aligned with your life's vision. Controlled obsession is not a risk, it is a tool. It transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary outcomes. It turns challenges into momentum. It converts focus into mastery. And it creates a life where success is the inevitable result of deliberate intensity. To master obsession is to master yourself. It is to harness one of the most powerful forces available to humans. When balanced with awareness, purpose, and resilience, obsession is no longer a dangerous fire. It becomes a sustainable, unstoppable engine that propels you toward your highest potential. This is the ultimate advantage, the kind that separates the exceptional from the average, the kind that ensures your actions, your focus, and your ambition are unstoppable. Controlled obsession is not just a mindset. It is the blueprint for extraordinary achievement.